Okay, so good afternoon and good morning for our highly welcomed participant and dear attenders and participants. I'm very glad to welcome you and finalize today's event session with the last but not least speaker, Manja Klemenčič from Harvard University. The topic of today's discussion is student-centered learning and teaching practices in online higher education. So quite an interesting and important topic from another angle. So now I give the floor to Manja. You're very welcome. So here you are.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Greetings to everybody at Ural Federal University and anywhere else that you might be watching us at EdCrunch Ural. It is my pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to speak about student-centered learning and teaching, but approach adopted to the online higher education. This session today is about the digital transformations. It's about digital classrooms. So I will focus my presentation mostly to that specific domain, the micro level of the class level. I have written recently a number of publications related to the student-centered teaching and learning in higher education. Some people might have heard about the Routledge International Handbook on student-centered learning and teaching in higher education, which has been published just this year in July. And I also co-authored a study for the European Commission, which deals with mapping the best practices in student-centered learning and teaching across European region, and specifically is geared towards informing the European policy making in this regard. In those publications, we try to take student-centered learning and teaching more globally, let's put it like that. We claim that student-centered teaching and learning does not happen only in the classroom, but what we need within higher education institutions is entire ecosystem that supports student-centered practices. And that means that the libraries are student-centered, that technology, infrastructure, information technology, learning technologies are in place, that classrooms enable active learning, that we have institutional policies that are supportive, that we have teaching support and support to teachers, such as professional development, that we have support to students, that we help them to learn study skills and similar. So you know, the new thinking is that you need more than just teachers who are well prepared and think about student-centered learning in the classrooms, that you need the entire ecosystem that thinks in that way. But today, for this presentation, I am going back to the basics and to the core, and that is the classroom. And I want to talk basically about what of the student-centered learning in online higher education and the how. So I really have just kind of two major questions in this regard. Let me say that I myself am a teacher in higher education and run classes continuously, a lot with undergraduates mostly at Harvard. And if you were my students at this point, I would start off with probably an entry ticket quiz. And in this entry ticket quiz, I might be asking you about the theoretical underpinnings about student-centered learning and teaching. I might bring in the question on Vygotsky, Piaget, Montessori, Dewey. I might be probing you into your understanding of what this concept means. So one of the kind of active learning approaches that I like to practice in my own classroom is to understand what is the prior knowledge that the participants are coming into the classroom. So that is a kind of an entry quiz, is a good way of getting that understanding where it is that your participants, your students are with the preparatory knowledge. I'm not doing this today because firstly, I don't see you, and this is really difficult for me because I don't see the faces. So I'm just assuming you are there somewhere in the ether, and it's not going to be such interactive session. We will have some time for question and answers towards the end, and I'm hoping that you will be putting in your questions through the chat or other ways. I think chat is the only option, and we'll have help from the moderator in this regard. So at the moment, just what I'm hoping that you will do is that you will have some notes where you will think, put down the ideas that resonate with you as I go through my presentation. And secondly, I hope that you will put down some questions for me to address in the last part of this session. I cannot share slides with you, so you'll have to bear only with my presentation. There is a PowerPoint, or there's a Prezi presentation, which I will have it uploaded in my speaker profile afterwards, but I cannot share it at the moment just because I don't have privileges, but it's okay. So I'll try to entertain you. So let's start with the question, what? What of student-centered learning and teaching? What I would like to highlight here is some of my pedagogical goals that I have as a teacher that really speak to the principles of student-centered learning and teaching. And those principles are important in the physical context of education, if we are in the physical classroom, but they're equally important when we are in the online context. And some of them are even more important. Let me talk briefly about them. So one of my kind of basic pedagogical principles really is to stimulate active learning. And when I talk about stimulation of active learning, I really mean activating those higher order cognitive processes that bring about the deeper learning among students. If you think about Bloom's taxonomy, and if you're teachers in higher education or administrators dealing with the questions of higher education, I do very much hope that you're aware of the Bloom's taxonomy, because it really points out very nicely what are those different what is the ordering of the different skills that we might use and utilize in the context of teaching and as part of the learning goals that we set out for our students. So what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to move in my teaching from the stage of remembering and recalling the facts, which is the basic, most passive form of processing or cognitive processing, to the understanding and explaining of ideas and the concepts, to application. And this is where my undergraduates are working mostly. It is applying the theoretical principles that we have learned in the classes on higher education to the real world situations, to the process of analysis, drawing connections between ideas, to the processes of evaluation, justifying a stand or the decision, being able to discuss a particular issue from both points of view, being able to place oneself from into the other person's perspective. This is hugely important, especially in the current times of the post-truth democracies that we are living in and conspiracy theories that are surrounding us, that students are able to think about the issue from both perspectives. And finally, the top of the pyramid is creation, that students are able to produce something new, original work, generate new knowledge. And in my own courses, I teach research-intensive courses to undergraduate students, which means that my students are asked to do research, conduct a research project in a usually kind of a limited scope, because I have them only from one term, but I am giving them assignments that enable them to generate new knowledge on a chosen topic. And I give them usually flexibility that they find a topic that they find interesting. So this is about the stimulation of active learning. It is really enabling the higher order cognitive processes as part of the learning process, rather than just remembering and understanding, which are probably important as well as some foundational courses, right? They have to have some basic theoretical knowledge. They have to have foundational theories if they want to do those higher order courses. So not every course will be doing just the creation. Some courses will have to deal with the remembering, understanding. But I hope that in the course of the study, the students have the ability to try those various cognitive processes and hone those various cognitive processes. So the second pedagogical goal that I have when we speak about the what of student-centered learning is to keep them attentive. And that is the aspect that is especially important in the online environment, as you all well know. It is a very different dynamic, and it's a very different, you have very different presence if you are in an online context like this. At this very point, I don't know where you are, what you're doing. You might be sitting in your couch. You might be in your desk with a head of speakers. There might be things happening around you. The children, the pets, noises from outside, the phone ringing, another computer open, Facebook in particular for students is a major distractor. So what we have to strive for is really to keep students motivated and attentive in the session that we have them in an online environment. It helps, and I'll speak later on about how to attend this. It helps to have video on of everybody. That's one of the techniques, but I'll speak about others as well. So keeping attention, and again, we'll come to this similar kind of principle as before. The more we stimulate their active learning, the more attentive they will be. If we are only lecturing at them passively, monotonously, not even reading like this. Imagine if I'm just like this in my session, I lose you, right? Whereas now we have a connection. They will be more likely to be distracted by other things, such as social media or something else. The next principle I would like to highlight is the inclusive classroom. And under the inclusive classroom, I understand giving each and every student in your classes equal opportunities to learn, which means students come with a variety of learning styles, with a variety of preparedness for your class, with different experiences, with different motivations. And what we as teachers have to strive is to bring them on the canvas, on the same page, right? To find them in the spot where they need our support. That means that we not only have to share with them our explicitly our learning goals, so that they will know what we expect from them and that they can translate our learning goals into their own learning goals and internalize them for us, but also that we would then provide them with the necessary learning support, that we are accessible for students to contact us if they need further information, further support. And again, this is where we come to this bigger ecosystem I discussed before, right? So it's not just the classroom, but that we can send students to somebody who will be giving tutoring if they need it, or that we have library support, and I can send my students who don't know how to use the library catalog or how to do the search or literature review, that I can send them to the librarians who will help them in this regard. Okay, so this is how, but at the end of the day, really, inclusivity means that you as a teacher, or I as a teacher, connect with every single student, and that have some kind of even if there are many, that they feel that they have the access to me if they need it and when they need it, or to my teaching staff. Okay, so inclusive classroom. And the last but not least principle that I would like to highlight, and you will see it in my nicely splashing slides, it's empowering learners. At the end of the day, what I believe is that student-centered learning brings us into a new kind of a context of student agency, or highlights the concept or the theories of student agencies. And student agency, I defined as student capabilities to intervene into their own learning pathways, or to shape their own learning pathways, and to intervene in the learning environments. And that usually means that they have some flexibility built into the classes, some choice that they can make, either the choice of the project that they will be working on, some choice in the assignments, some choice of the maybe introducing new topics into the course. All that kind of builds on their inherent motivations and inherent interest to learn. But also it means that students have the responsibility for their own learning. And this is part of the student-centered learning, to kind of remind them that they ultimately are responsible for the learning and how much they learn, and that they can be co-creators of their own learning, of the learning of their peers, because learning is essentially a social process, but also co-creators of new original knowledge if we bring them up to the top of the Bloom's pyramid into creating new knowledge. So this is these are kind of my basic principles, pedagogical principles, and I'm highlighting them here because if you do not kind of agree with them completely, you might have difficulties maybe accepting my house or how to go about teaching in an online classroom. So moving now into the second part of the presentation, into the how question. How can we adopt student-centered learning practices in an online classroom? And here I will be focusing on the three main areas: on learner engagement inside the classroom, the learner engagement outside the classroom, and things to avoid. So let me maybe start with things to avoid just right at the beginning. One thing that we have found through the research now is that long lectures in a synchronous session like this one don't work for students. People who have researched this have found that their attention span is extremely short, short up to something 12, 15 minutes, and that you necessarily have to break down the session into smaller sections in order to keep them attentive and to keep them learning. So one of those one rule of thumb recipe: breaking up the long session into smaller sections, lecture for say 15 to 20 minutes, follow up by an active learning activity. It can only be a poll on, or a quiz, kind of a quick quiz on something that you have been talking about, so that they do something about it. Or it's about sending them into the breakout rooms with a prompt, so that they come up with discuss the topic that you have been covering, or give them a real problem to solve, and they can do this with partners as a peer-to-peer learning exercise. And the other way to go about long lectures is pre-recording. And that's what we have seen people have been doing a lot in a flipped classroom. It's nothing new. You pre-record, and ideally you pre-record with a kind of a intermezzos, again with a self-test quizzes inserted, with multimedia, which is not just yourself speaking, but some other kind of input into the lecture. And then students can do that, prepare in advance at their own pace, pausing, cruising faster through, self-testing. And then when they come into the classroom, you really capitalize on the presence together for the active learning activities, for the interactive type of assignments that they can do in pairs, in small groups, the large discussions, and similar. Okay, so you can think about breaking out, say, if you have 2 hours class, into 2 20-minute sections, lecture followed by something active, another lecture, something active, and then repeating it, and then decide how much of pauses or not you actually want to have in that space. Pauses can be tricky, especially if you have it longer, let's say 10 minutes, because people start checking their emails and reading their news, and it's difficult to really bring them back into the same mode. So maybe kind of a shorter pauses just for the absolutely necessary, just to keep them still in the same state of mind with you. So something that would be one of the advices. And then again, if you have lectures, it's nice to make them more kind of have a humanizing the content, right? It's not just about the content that you give. It's nice to bring yourself into it. Bring people into your own space. You know, this is here, you're with me in my study. I'm giving you that contact, but we also try to have some kind of a connection with you when I'm speaking. Okay, so one is a long lecture, and the other one is really how you are as a speaker, as a lecturer, as an instructor in an online environment. And here I can just demonstrate some differences. Imagine me now kind of sitting here in my lounge, lounging about and kind of speaking out of my lounge. Or even if I'm just sitting in my chair, I'm very much confined. It's not my usual mode, the way that I speak when I am in the classroom with the students, in a physical classroom. So if at all possible, try to recreate a space for yourself as you are normally as a speaker in your own classroom. And for me, this is standing, and I need a bit of space. So have a little stand here that I bought, or you can have kind of things pile up on the top of your desk, just that we are in a standing, and I have my space so that I can move about. Good lighting, it's important. because they have to see you. So I have a little camera that has lights, but you can also do it with a very simple, ordinary lights that are usually behind the computer, not behind you, and not on the top, because those tend to give you unflattering shades. So that's how I have tried it, and it actually is true. So some good lighting, needless to say, good speakers speaking so that you can be heard. I'm relying here on my computer only, but have tested it many times and it's sufficient. I had a little, kind of just little speaker that you put like this on you, but it didn't do anything. So I'm putting it aside. So some things like that, microphone, and always contingency plan if technical problems occur. And that is likely to happen. The more we all are using the online technology, likely things go wrong. I have my capable moderators here who will sort us out. So I don't have a contingency plan, probably foolishly, but I rely on their expertise, and they have done this a lot, and they have a good infrastructure put together. But for the classroom, I do have contingency plan, and I discussed that with them at the beginning. So if your internet connection breaks down and you disappear, just drop me an email. I'm recording everything, and you can watch the rest of the recording later on and just join us the moment you can. If something goes on wrongly on my side, I do tend to have another account open on my iPad, just in case that I would go through that means if something happened with my computer. But I am in a reliable internet connection, so it's not usually a problem. But it's just nice to know, say, if I disappear, and we all disappear, I will try to come back as soon as possible. And if I cannot come back, we'll have a makeup session on that, and I will email you. So this is my contingency plan, but you can set up whatever contingency plan you have, and also inform your students what to do in case they disappear because of technical problems, or because they need to be somewhere else. So just those are kind of small things and very commonsensical, but I wanted to, nevertheless, to highlight them. Now I'll go quickly through the questions of how to increase learner engagement in the classroom itself. At the beginning of this session, I have told you what I would have done if you were my students. And I had just started a course on student-centered learning and teaching in higher education. Entry tickets are really nice way to grasp this kind of a common knowledge of the students. They can be conducted in the session itself, or they can be conducted prior to the session. So even before you come and start with your course, you know where the students stand. I usually do combination of both. All of my students have to fill out a pre-enrollment survey where I not only ask about demographics, so I know whom I have in my classroom, but also about prior knowledge about the field. And I usually post at least one kind of a topic-related question. This term, I'm teaching a course in Sociology of Higher Education. Again, it's a research-intensive seminar. And usually I kind of teach them the 8 domains in the Sociology of Higher Education: the impact of college and students, colleges and universities as organizations, higher education politics, academic profession, inequalities, and so on. But this year, since we are in the time of pandemic, I am also adding a meta theme, and that is what were the implications of the pandemic on higher education? And that's the question I posed in my pre-enrollment survey. I wanted to get the sense of what are they thinking about and how they're thinking about it, this topic. And at the same time, I'm anchoring this as a meta theme for our course. Then we have self-checks, material self-checks. So you assign them the reading, or you assign them a problem. You give them some kind of a video lecture pre-recorded, and then you give them also a self-test quizzes so that they can self-check if their own grasp of the material. Another technique that I use a lot and has not been resisted, at least judging from my course evaluations, I do not get punished for cold calling students. Cold calling students means that you basically look at your gallery and you call on people with a question without any kind of a prior announcement. And students get used to that. And that means that they stay with you because they don't want to be caught being somewhere else with their mind if there's a possibility that they will be cold. But my cold calling is not done in a way, my questions are not in the way that there is necessarily a straightforward right or wrong answer. I don't want to shame them. I want to engage them, right? So what I do is I would be phrasing the question in a way that they can they really can contribute something. And then I would follow up with questions if they're struggling so that they can make up their mind on the spot and give a contribution on this question that I'm asking about. So it's a cold calling, but it's a kind of a welcoming and inclusive and helpful so that they don't fear it and they don't shut out and sweat from anxiety. Manja is going to be cold calling me at some point. The other thing is small things. You are talking about the topic. Now I could ask you how many of you are practicing cold calling. That would be and I would in Zoom will ask you raise hands sign or say yes, and I would check how many of you practice this. But I could also ask for I could also do a poll, and in the poll I usually use the poll everywhere, but there are other ways that you can do this. I would ask students in a kind of open text entry. In your case, I would ask you, give me, if you are cold calling, what is the reaction of the students? And then you would just put in the words, and then I would present this as a cloud. So instantly, we would have, we would measure the temperature of cold calling of a number of people, and that can be scaled up. That's not just for the 12 or the 25, that can be for 400 people in the room that you kind of create a word cloud of students' reactions on their cold calling. Okay. Small group conversations in the breakout rooms is something that students immensely appreciate, that it connects them to each other, that it gives them opportunity for the creation and the analysis and the judgment, all of the upper level, higher order skills that I'm trying to convey in my teaching. So there would be a prompt, an assignment, and I would give them anything between, depending on the assignment and whether they're in twos or the threes. Usually I wouldn't do larger groups than that, between either 7 to 15 minutes, depending on the complexity of the assignment. And then we come back together, and I'm inviting people to contribute, or I'm giving the assignment to the people. I'm opening the Google Doc. The groups have to already be giving me their responses into it, and I receive it, and then I would be checking them as I wait for them to come back, and I would choose those that are the closest to what I was hoping for, and I would call on that group. I would say, so which is the group that have wrote this? Can you please lead us through your thinking, right? So something like that. So small group conversations, breakout groups work amazingly well in an online environment in order to increase learner engagement in the classroom. Debates is another format. Having debates, Kialo Debates is the online platform which works marvelously. If you haven't seen it, I have tried it last year in a physical classroom, but it worked really well. Annotation tools and whiteboards. Again, some people are using this. I don't really use them because they don't fit particularly well in the content that I'm teaching, but I do use the debates. And then collaborative assignments and the teamwork. Again, breakout rooms can be something like that, where you give them assignment, they have to solve it for you, and then we come together and speak about it. And the final thing that I want to mention again is keeping videos on, if at all technically possible for everyone, is really an important part of keeping connected and engaged in the classroom. So I have one more, okay? So stay with me, please, now for the learner engagement outside the classroom, and then I will be taking some questions.
Okay.
Okay, yes. So learner engagement outside the classroom. If you were seeing my slide now, what I have is a photo of my office, which I haven't been to for the past how many months? It's 16th of March because we are under lockdown still. But nevertheless, office hours is something that I offer diligently, generously, and with the invitation to students that they do not have to come to me with a Nobel Prize winning question, but that I am welcoming them to see me at any point when I have my office hours, that there is a sign up that I have via my Calendly, and my slots are 20 minutes each. And then that they should come to me just to talk about either class, other student experiences. I teach higher education, so I'm interested to hear about other things, not just necessarily the course contents. So it's really something that I practice rigorously. When I have smaller classes, when I have research-intensive seminars, even people up to 50 people, I actually require that they meet with me at least once. So we have made a connection. They have passed over the threshold of fearing to see me or talk to me. And once they have been in my office and we have had that conversation, get to know each other, it really changes the way that they interact in the classroom itself. So it's really important for them to kind of get to know me in a human side, not just, but that's for the physical. But in the same way it works via Zoom. So now that we cannot meet physically, I have required Zoom office hours where they meet with me. It can be even shorter when we are on Zoom. When we are in the office hours in my office, I think 20 minutes I meet with them, but in Zoom we are more efficient somehow, so 15 minutes, and also to avoid the Zoom fatigue, 15 minutes is just enough. Other things that I wanted to highlight for the learning assignment outside classroom is student collaboration assignments that they do as a part of the homework. This week, I'm sending students, again, in the course Sociology of Higher Education, we are working on politics of higher education. I have given assignment to students that they have to pair up, find somebody in the class that they will work with as a pair, and they need to find somebody who is either policy maker or a policy influencer in higher education. So they need to find somebody either from the government, or it can be media influences policy, it can be think tanks, it can be higher education consultants, and they have to interview them for 15 minutes together. So those two people have to meet up, they have to think about whom they will identify. I give them a kind of a prompt what they have to ask. One is, what is this role about? Organization, what do you do? And what are the responses to COVID policy responses, or what they should be? But they have to work together. And that's really connected them to each other, which is hugely important, especially in the online environment. I'll go quickly through 3 other things. Fast feedback on the assignments. This is again, this is kind of outside classroom, right? I get their reflective essay on their research topic. I need to turn around this very quickly, or my TFs, in order to have them keep going and that keep them engaged to keep working on their homework assignment, which is their research project. Then you can do also, kind of extra things. If you have time, a joint movie night, which is optional, to kind of build the community, or inviting them to a talk that is given on the topic, but it's outside the classroom, and say, let's go together as a class. It's kind of a bonding and creating other opportunities to meet, again, in an online environment. And finally, and this is, it's assessment. An assessment could be an entire session that I could talk about. But student-centered assessment, if at all possible, can be also something that is more problem-solving oriented rather than just exam, one final exam, or at least there is a variety of the small stake exams rather than just one final exam. I'm putting this as a learning engagement outside classroom because they usually prepare for those assignments outside the classroom, right? But really thinking about how to make their assessment more student-centered, and how can you do anything else than just one final big exam when they fail or they get a grade. Are there other ways that you can do it, that you more of smaller ones where you give them feedback, so they're more formative than just summative, or some big capstone project or something like that. Okay, so this is what I had. What I try to talk to you about is student-centered learning and teaching in higher education in an online context. And I shared with you under the what question, my principles as a teacher, my pedagogical principles. And I spoke specifically about the issue of keeping students' attention, about empowering of the students, and then I spoke about the second topic, which was how do we achieve this through the practices in online learning, and specifically focusing on the learner engagement inside the classroom and learner engagement outside the classroom and things to avoid. And that's all from my presentation. I would be very happy to get some of your questions now.
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much for such an interesting report. I was trying to stay with you to get this very interaction. Yeah, and the questions are, now we have 9 minutes left, so let's start with the questions. The first question goes from Vladimir, and he asks, how to motivate a student online? If there is no live communication with a friend, what soft skills should a modern teacher have?
Interesting question. Motivation is really the hardest. I think, Vladimir, you're really hitting here, you know, the stone on the right kind of a question. It's really in the kind of the activities that you prepare for them and the assignment. And I think that one killer of motivation can be if you overload them too soon with the kind of passive readings, which are just reading. If you can, from the beginning, either create kind of engaging lectures that you pre-record, lectures that they will actually want to watch. And it's not just kind of you reading tons of papers, but you bring some multimedia in as well, or kind of video excerpts or something that is just a little bit different, and that the students see that they can self-test so that they can actually measure their own learning. That can be motivational. Guest speakers are usually motivational, just to kind of break out your usual weekly routine, week after the week. Bring somebody new face, somebody who is interesting and is from the real world, is from the practice. They feel that they can get some skills. And again, you know, not expecting them just to remember, memorize, and to kind of show their understanding, but actually create something, or at least analyze and judge. The more you push them, your assignments, into the upper levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, the more students kind of get motivated. They are actually feeling they're doing something, and they feel that they're gaining some skills rather than just need to memorize and kind of show you that they have understood what you have said about. So I would say those are some of it's really the quality of the assignments, your entire methodology of your course that you can kind of that you can dip into their intrinsic motivations to learn, and that you kind of bring the topics as much as possible, depending on the context, their real world experiences, to their expectations, what they will do after they finish and graduate, something that employers might appreciate. So if you can make those connections as well, those are also motivational boosts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for such a good answer. Well, the next question was from me. The main idea was that if we are doing 2 or 3 things simultaneously with watching a lecture, for example, jogging on ironing or cooking, how much we lose and how much information we get?
That's a great question. I would say it depends what kind of a multitasker you are. It really depends. Some people can do and are very effective jogging and watching the videos at some point. I'm not. I really have to be in my kind of a space. And even if I'm too much in a kind of just sitting on a sofa and lounging, I'm losing more of the content than normally I would if I would be sitting upright and listening to the video. So it's really I would say what is important here is understanding yourself as a learner. It's a kind of a self-assessment and reflection on yourself as a learner. This is part of what we call of a self-regulation skills. Zimmerman has written about self-regulation. And what we want from our students is we want to teach them how to be self-regulated learners. And this is part of again, as I spoke about the ecosystem, student support can help students give sessions on on study skills and on understanding their own study habits or how they are as learners. But this is also something we can help them in each of the courses as a teachers, so that we have a very clear course structure, that we very clearly say what is the assignment, what we expect from the student assignment, that we tell them even what was the experience from the students in the past who have taken this course. And that you can, even if you are inclined to, you can ask people about what their habits are of watching those pre-recorded videos, for example, and whether they do this, in what way they do, and then self-assess how effective they are in grasping the content and how well they do on the self-test afterwards. I think it's the easiest, or if you're individual, you self-test. You do it one way and then you do it the other way. And if there is a quiz, and hopefully your instructor is providing you with a self-test quiz, you see how well you have done in 2 different sessions. So it's really, really, it's the life skill of learning how to be most effective learner, which is important for all of us, right? It's not just for our undergraduate students. We continue to learn, and we hopefully kind of have time to reflect on how we learn best and what it is that is most effective for us. Are we more of a reading type, deep readers, and this is how we get to the knowledge, or we prefer the multimedia conveying of information? Do we learn better if somebody's telling it to us? Do we learn better if we take notes by hand and then we kind of keep that stays with us, or we annotate and underline? So this is all the question of our own, but our students often do not have those skills and that self-reflective mechanism. So as instructors, we should help them as well. It's also kind of our duty not only to convey to them the knowledge and help them generate knowledge in our own field, but also help them to grow as learners.
Okay, well, thank you. The next question goes from Sonia from Colorado. How you have already covered some of the topic related to this question. How do you keep students interested with online learning? Usually the attention span is no longer than 10-15 minutes. What learning techniques do you employ to bring them back?
Yes, excellent question, Sonia from Colorado. I would bring you back to the part of the presentation where I spoke about student engagement in the classroom and some of the techniques mentioned there. And that is that the lecture itself, it is not longer than, say, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. But then you have the intermezzos, that those intermezzos include something active learning, like a poll, or something where they have to click yes or no, or going from your lecture into the breakout rooms with a prompt, so that they are actually doing something with what they have heard from you, that they are applying it, or they are judging or evaluating something, or they are coming up with a new solution to solve something like that. So it's really in the way that you structure each individual session, the scenarios for your session, and that fits kind of a greater course design of your course. Each session has this kind of a very clear plan, what you do every minute, really. And this is even more important in an online environment than in a physical classroom, because in the physical classroom, sometimes you can more organically go by the ear and you see what's the feel. People are very tired. You will give them a stretching exercise. You cannot read people so well in an online environment. I mean, you can see if everybody is kind of laughing at something, and you are not funny, I'm not funny. So I usually think, okay, they must be somewhere else right now. And when they're frantically typing in, you're in Facebook. And at that point, it's just nice. Okay, people, now, how about come back to me? Let's have an intention and do something. Maybe something completely crazy. Let's do a stretching, and I want to see all of the feet up or something like that, just to move the dynamic and to bring them back and then go from there. And again, it depends how many people you actually physically see in your gallery. In Zoom, I can see 25, 26, or if I'm my bigger computer, maybe 49, but that's it. If it's more than that, there's half of the people that I don't see all the time, or I have to shift between the screens, which is it's difficult to follow what's happening with the rest. And again, keeping videos on gives you at least some signal that they might be with you, rather than doing something completely else.
Okay, so let's deal with the last question if we have time, because there are just seconds. So not all college and university teachers have pedagogical background, for example, an education degree where you acquire all these techniques and learning philosophies and methods, psychology of learners, curriculum development skills. Can people who just found themselves in the profession acquire all these skills on the job?
Oh, it's an excellent question. It's expected that we are superheroes, isn't it, right? That we do our research amazingly well, and that we manage to teach, that we are real performers and entertainers, and that we have that we service to our academic communities, and then we consultancies to the public. So it's a lot. It's a lot expected. I think you shouldn't be required to do everything by yourself, and hopefully you have institutions at home that back you up with providing at least some of the training and some of those resources to help you improve as a teacher. And this is, again, I'm talking about the ecosystem. Student-centered learning ecosystem means that there is somebody in your institution, a kind of center for teaching and learning excellence or teacher support that kind of pulls together the knowledge that we have. And there's so much written about it. I have this whole Routledge Handbook on the best practices, and the other book for the commission, the mapping of student-centered learning practices. There's tons out there. But it takes time from you, and it takes time away from you preparing on the content, and takes time away from your research. So it's hopefully your institution has somebody who pulls this together. It makes it in a nice kind of a resource database that you can choose, and that maybe gives you a kind of portfolio of techniques that you do, role play, debate, small group discussion, and that you can kind of consult those as needed. And on the other hand, that they give you some kind of refreshing trainings, workshops. We all have been trained here at Harvard over the summer on how we shift from the physical space into the online space, and we have given the time. But at the end of the day, what I should say is that given the demands on us as researchers, and given how we are measured as researchers in our promotions, and how much research counts in all of that, applying for funding or promotions, we tend to kind of put the teaching sometimes on the side, and that shouldn't be the case. I think that we should be thinking about our teaching methodologies as committingly as we are when we are preparing our research methodology as part of the proposal, that when we are applying for funding. So we have to kind of clear these things in our head as well. And we have to set out the clear teaching methodology as part of each course that we are teaching. And that has to be clear in the syllabus that we prepare, the learning goals, the activities we'll do, how we will grade, and things like that. So I demand, but you should not be alone. Your institution should be supporting you in this. And my true belief is that we all want to be good teachers, right? I actually genuinely believe that anybody who is teaching and who goes there into the classroom in front of people wants to do it well. It is just a question, do we have the time, and do we have any support so that we are not completely left to our own devices in improving ourselves as teachers? And here the institution should give you some expertise. And the events like EdCrunch.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I would like to say thank you very much. We highly appreciate your attendance, your participation in this very conference. It's really interesting. And the main motto, which I like the most, is that, yes, we are superheroes as a teachers. So we also learn a lot from these very realities we have. So thank you for your time. Thank you, all the participants. It was a great pleasure to talk to you, to have a chance. There are some questions which are left we don't have time to answer. In case you have time, just follow the chat session and maybe answer some of them if you don't mind.
Have a look. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for having me. Good luck with everyone in these strange times, and I'll have a chat. I'll look at the chat session if I can respond to some as well.
Okay. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Federal University.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.